Well, just very quickly, as far as introductions, thanks everybody for joining. So this is another Microsoft User Group Utah webinar, or MUGIT. Love that acronym. If you want to find out more about, if you're in the Salt Lake City or the broader Salt Lake area and would like to participate in any of these Microsoft-centric user groups and activities, go out to Meetup and do a search on MUGIT, M-U-G-U-T, and you'll find our events. I know we have an event happening, I think on the 24th of this month, but I have no idea what the topic is this month. Maybe someone, Greg perchance, will speak up and tell me what the topic is. I know what the topic is next month because I'm presenting, but I just don't know what it is this month. But we're grateful to have Antonio join us today to talk about Project Cortex. Just a little bit about Antonio. I was trying to think, like, when it was I met you. Has it been close to a decade?
Something it has. Like I think we've known each other for about 10 years, Christian.
Yeah. And so Antonio is with Protiviti, based in the Toronto area. And he has been in the SharePoint, the collaboration space for a long time. He's an 8-time Microsoft MVP, Office Apps and Services. And I'll let him give kind of a broader kind of look at his experience. Just some very quickly before we get started, though, if you do have any questions throughout, I'll be monitoring. I'll interrupt Antonio if there are any pressing questions, but otherwise he'll handle anything that's remaining at the end. We'll remain online to answer any of those questions. But please do use either the chat or the Q&A module here in the meeting. With that, Antonio, and yes, it's being live streamed and recorded so that you can get a copy of the recording, and it'll be posted out to the Collab Talk page and on YouTube following the event. But Antonio, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Christian. Thank you for having me. Thanks everyone for joining us today to talk about Project Cortex. I do recognize a few of the names on the attendee list, so happy to see you guys here. Project Cortex has been getting a lot of attention recently, and it is a brand new product that Microsoft is releasing very soon. This half of this year is what we've been told. Many of you would have heard about Project Cortex during Satya Nadella's keynote at Microsoft Ignite 2019, and there's been bits of information, really useful information, actually being released by Microsoft over the last few months. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Project Cortex and talk about how it can help you improve your organization in terms of productivity, compliance, and knowledge. And we're going to come back to that word knowledge a lot. So you'll hear it quite a bit over the next little while. As Christian mentioned, my name is Antonio Mayo. I'm a director with Protiviti, and I am based in near Toronto, Canada. I'm actually based in Ottawa, so not too far from Toronto, but I work primarily in the Toronto area. My contact information is there. Please do feel free to reach out if you've got any questions you think of after this or want to talk more about Project Cortex. This is a new product coming from Microsoft that is particularly interesting to me, and I'm really looking forward to making use of it with our clients. Protiviti, we're part of the private preview program just as of recently, so I'm excited to share what I know about the product with you today, what I can share. So in terms of what we're going to talk about, so first we'll talk about what Project Cortex is, how we think it can help you in your organization. We're going to talk about a couple of business scenarios where we see Project Cortex in particular being useful. I'm going to show you a couple of demos. Now these demos are the same ones that are on the Microsoft resources site for Project Cortex. We can't show Cortex itself yet, but the demos that are on that site, on the Microsoft site, which I believe is on one of the resource sites on the tech community site, are actually really useful. So if you haven't seen those yet, please check them out. We'll talk a little bit about how it works and then what else you need to know to be ready for Project Cortex once it is released. So I wanted to start off having us think a little bit about the challenges that we run into in our organizations when it comes to managing information and in particular accessing knowledge. And that word knowledge is going to be really important with regards to Project Cortex, because Project Cortex is really about helping you take all of this data that you have within your organization in various disparate places, no matter how much effort you've tried to put into organizing it. taking all of that data and actually turning it into knowledge, turning it into information that you can leverage to help you and your teams be more effective in your jobs. Now, if we think about some of the challenges that we've traditionally seen over the years, where many of us have been in this industry for a long time, in many organizations, we of course see disconnected silos of information, especially when it comes to physical documents, but even electronic documents and how information is stored and shared and perhaps hoarded. We've seen challenges with search, where it's really difficult in many organizations to really find the information you need to be productive really quickly. And this can really affect the effectiveness of our teams. There's tacit knowledge that everyone has that's really difficult to tap. I don't know how many times that I have been, just accidentally or happen to be included on an email related to some project where I am able to contribute, but I just happen to know about it because someone accidentally thought about including me on that thread. And then, of course, knowledge that leaves our organizations when people leave or when people change roles or change teams within an organization. Now, some examples, some concrete examples of this, of course, are people storing documents across multiple file shares where not everyone has access to those documents. You end up duplicating information. Or perhaps reports, documents, other data being uploaded to SharePoint for the purpose of sharing it with others, but metadata not being effectively applied. So it becomes really difficult to find or filter to access that data. We often have employees that work on multiple similar projects at the same time, employees that don't talk to each other, teams that don't really communicate or interact, and therefore people end up duplicating effort and content and information. We see that often in medium to large size organizations, but even in small companies that happens. And then finally, when people leave an organization or leave a team, so imagine a project lead leaves a project and they've managed that all the information related to a project in their email or through unstructured content. It gets really difficult to pull that together and have a new lead come in and take over that project. Now, if we keep these challenges in mind and think about how have we dealt with these in the past. So in the past, we've often used metadata in SharePoint, and that's been a very common recommendation for helping us organize our information, avoid information silos, help people search on and filter and find information more effectively. It's still a good recommendation, but it is one of the traditional things that we've done and spent a lot of effort on. We've built custom search solutions across multiple platforms. We've used advanced automation solutions to help us scan or capture data. And then most, if not all of us, have built knowledge bases within organizations. Now, all of these are still effective tools to use and build, but in many cases, they can be extremely time-consuming to build, either for the individuals that are configuring them or even for end users. And often they can be very expensive. And we have likely all had the experience of putting these in place and finding that over time, it may or may not have necessarily been worth it to actually do some of these because it may not have solved the core problem of helping us turn all this data and information really into knowledge that we can use to be effective. So Project Cortex looks to try to address this, right? Knowledge Cortex is about building a knowledge network within your organization. Taking all of this data that we have, establishing connections across that data, and making it more readily available in automated ways and in smart ways where data can appear at the locations where we need it. Now, Cortex is made up of 3 components that are kind of identified here around this central circle. The first is a method to smartly ingest or process content. So if you think about bringing in contracts or purchase orders, invoices, right? Some of that transactional data you might have in your organization. If you're a company that's producing, let's say, 100,000 purchase orders a week, today you would likely not bring that data into SharePoint. First of all, because it would take you too long. And then once you have it in there, you likely couldn't do anything with it because it's just so much data you're ingesting at one time. Well, Cortex is being built to help you address that and help bring that content in to SharePoint in very smart ways. The second component down in the bottom left is about helping you automatically extract data or knowledge from all of these documents or content that you're bringing in. Being able to to extract that data in terms of topics, entities, either in learned ways or in taught ways. And it's important to keep in mind through this that machine learning is very different than machine teaching. And Project Cortex is being designed to support both models of processing data. It's also about bringing tools to individuals that manage knowledge to help curate that data. So be able to take topics that you want to have exposed to people and really provide the right resources around them, or prevent certain topics from being exposed. And also taking topics through a certain life cycle. And then finally in the top right, the third component really is about providing insights and analytics around your knowledge, being able to help you understand what knowledge is coming in and out of your organization, helping people to better access it, and helping you to process it and take it through its life cycle. So we're going to look at a few of these as we go through our webinar today. Project Cortex and building this knowledge network is about, at a business level, empowering people with the knowledge and the expertise they need to get their jobs done day to day. It's about automatically connecting people to the knowledge that they need, to the information that they need across teams and across systems, being able to mine data within Microsoft 365 and connect that data together, present it to people in the ways that they work day to day, automatically extract metadata and have that mapped to your taxonomies, building a knowledge center as a prime destination within Microsoft 365 where users can go to either find the expertise they need or find the knowledge and information they need, and then being able to manage and protect that information using machine learning, using automated models for extracting data, classifying documents, being able to train those models, and being able to build those within the context of your information in another destination that's called the Content Center. So let's take a look at what these look like. Ultimately, Project Cortex is about helping you connect the data that you have within your organization so that you can better leverage it, be more effective with it, discover and use the knowledge and expertise that exists within your organization, and to be able to kind of transform the way people work, actually leverage that knowledge network, not only in the methods that are being brought within Microsoft 365, the UI that you're going to see, but also in ways that you can extend it. Project Cortex is actually building a knowledge graph behind the scenes that you can programmatically access through the Microsoft Graph. All of the components that you're about to see use the Microsoft Graph to access that knowledge, and then you yourself will be able to call APIs through the graph to build your own ways of interacting with that knowledge. Now, if we take a look at the smart ingestion portion for a second, so that component that'll allow you to automatically ingest content. The type of documents that we typically think about are some of these either transactional documents or documents that can be considered unstructured or semi-structured. So if you think of things like invoices, receipts, contracts, proposals, those tend to follow sometimes a very standard form. So you can think about invoices in an organization typically all look very similar or look the same. That said, you might be getting invoices from other organizations that you need to process, and therefore they might have a different format. Purchase orders as well tend to follow a fairly structured view. If you look at documents like resumes, for example, everyone's resume tends to look a little bit different and follow a slightly different format. So you can think of these types of documents as unstructured or semi-structured. Project Cortex is bringing you capabilities to ingest this content at high capacity and then automatically process it using machine learning or machine teaching. Now, as you bring in that content, as you process it through a machine learning algorithm or through a machine teaching algorithm, we often think of that as classifying your documents. So taking a contract, for example, and not only telling you that it is a contract, but also telling you what the value of that contract is, when it starts, when it expires, and let's say who the vendor is as well. And then once you've captured that, and let's say automatically applied that as metadata to your contract, you can then have other processes automatically kick off from that. When you think about connecting the process of automatically capturing that metadata, to kicking off a flow through Power Automate that does something intelligent with that content. That's one of the key use cases that Cortex is built around. Now I'm going to step out here into a demo, and we'll walk through a little bit of what that looks like in practice. And again, this is one of Microsoft's demos that they've put out on the tech community site that you can go take a look at and walk through yourself. Excuse me. So if we look at this site here, so this is a view of what will be called a content center. So a content center is a new first-party destination within Microsoft 365. It is essentially a new site template, and you'll be able to have more than one content center. A content center is where you are going to build your AI models and train them and test them and provide feedback and adjust them. And then once you have it, your AI model, you can take it and go apply to content elsewhere within SharePoint. Now, it's important to notice here, we are within SharePoint. So Project Cortex is a new product that is built on top of SharePoint, but it's leveraging other services as well. So we're in our Finance Content Center. We're going to click on New the way we normally would in a SharePoint library. We're going to create a new document library here, and we're going to call it Purchase Order. So we're still just going through standard SharePoint right now. When that library gets created, that library called Purchase Order, you'll notice that there's a new button that appears here called AI Builder. And this is actually integrating the library and the Content Center with AI Builder from the Power Platform. Now, when I click on that, AI Builder gets invoked, and I'm going to create a new AI model. So this is a machine learning model. What I'm showing you here is the machine learning use case within Cortex. So I give the AI model a name, Purchase Order, and I click Create. Now I need to add documents because machine learning is really based on providing samples of documents to your model and having it learn from those samples, and then giving it both positive samples and negative samples, and giving it feedback on how the model did in processing those samples. So in AI Builder, I'm going to add some documents. I'm going to choose somewhere between 5 and 10 documents. And this is an important point because with traditional AI machine learning models, you often need to provide thousands, if not tens of thousands of examples. In this case, most of our models in these examples that we've tried take approximately 10 documents to train the model with. So I'm going to choose 10 documents here. I'm going to bring them in to the AI Builder. I'm going to choose one of them as an example. And it's going to show me a representation of that document. And it's going to have picked out various entities within here. So for example, if I take this one here and I click on it, it's actually going to tell me that it thinks it's a vendor. It actually has a 66% certainty or confidence level that this is a vendor. And we're going to add that to our model as you see here on the side by clicking it. I'm then going to choose a date and a PO number, let's say, and I'm going to have it choose some others as well. And ultimately, I'm going to end up with a number of entities that it sees within this document that it's going to attempt to extract. Now, once I've chosen all my entities, I'm going to review that, and I'm going to tell the model to go ahead and train itself using the example documents that I've uploaded. So it's going to train itself to actually extract these different entities that I've highlighted in that example. Now, that tends to take a few minutes. While that's happening, it'll process those documents. It'll tell you when it's complete, as you'll see here. And once you've trained that model, you can then test it, or you can publish that model to libraries within your environment. So I'm going to publish this one here. So it's going to publish that model to a library within the Finance Content Center site you saw earlier. Excuse me. In publishing that model, it's actually going to create a flow using Power Automate. This flow is going to be created using a template, so it's very easy to create. It simply wants to create those connections, which most of them will be automatic since it's pointing to SharePoint and the Common Data Service. We'll hit Continue, and it will have published that, first of all, that AI model to this library here. It will also have published a flow through Power Automate to this library so that now when I upload documents, the flow will get triggered. It'll process those documents using the AI model I just trained. And you'll see in a second, it's going to actually populate all of these metadata columns automatically by extracting those values that we just trained the model with. So if I click Upload and I choose a number of documents, those are now going to get processed as they come in. Again, flow is being triggered as those documents come in. It's processing the document using the AI model and then automatically populating these metadata columns. And these metadata columns are just standard SharePoint metadata. So anything else that I would have done based on these metadata columns, I can also create using Power Automate. Let's for example, say that if I have a purchase order that's over a certain dollar value, I have to trigger an approval workflow with additional management oversight. I can have that automatically happen based on this subtotal or a total value that comes in. Now I can click on these documents. I can see, of course, the metadata in the information panel that I normally would. If I open that document, I can see here how, both the visual representation of the document and the metadata that was extracted. And I can provide feedback on the model to adjust what it learned so that I can get more accurate as I work through different examples. Okay, so that's one example of how Project Cortex can use machine learning to automatically process documents. Once I've created that model within my content center, I can then publish it to libraries throughout my SharePoint environment, so that as people bring in documents and content into those libraries, I can have them automatically processed through machine learning, automatically extract entities and populate metadata with them, and then have that feed downstream processes. So if we think about a second what we just saw, we have content coming into SharePoint. That content can be coming in through the typical ways of users uploading them, or automated methods for capturing content and bringing them in. And Cortex will bring new methods for capturing that content, but right now we're seeing just that method of a user uploading content. It's going to process that content in order to classify it using machine learning. It's going to populate metadata and then allow us to feed downstream processes using that. Now, you'll notice that through this process, we had both AI Builder and a person, in this case, me, actually work through that model. And we do feel that that tends to be the best model for building AI models. Poor choice of words there, but the best method, let's say, for building AI models, where it's both a machine learning algorithm as well as a person that directs what is a positive outcome and what's the negative outcome. That way the model can learn more over time. So the use of AI Builder here is intentional because it is built into the platform, and it provides a robust mechanism for teaching AI models to process documents and extract data. As well, it allows a person to be involved and allow it to direct the model so that you can classify your documents and direct it on which entities to extract and how do those entities map to data within our organization, or data that's meaningful to our organization. Now, just as an overview, what we saw here, and you'll see this talked about in some of the Project Cortex material, is one of the form processing use cases. So the method that we saw here, we saw an example for purchase orders where we're extracting this data, but you could use this for forms that users fill out. So electronic forms or even paper forms, if you scan them and OCR'd them, you could use it for processing those and automatically bringing the data within those forms into SharePoint as metadata on the documents. So when we hear the notion that Project Cortex can address form processing use cases, this right here that you've just seen is very much the use case that we saw, where we teach the model, or we have the model learn, in this case, which entities are meaningful. We feed a number of examples to test and train that model. We review what the model is producing and the fields that it's looking to extract. And then we actually test it against documents within a SharePoint library. Now, we mentioned this earlier, but machine teaching is not the same thing as machine learning. What we've seen a moment ago is machine learning. Project Cortex will also bring a machine teaching method for extracting content from documents and processing those in an automated way. Machine learning is very much about feeding a model examples, both positive examples and negative examples, and having it learn from those examples. Machine teaching is much more about directing the AI model into what the meaning for different entities is. So the machine teaching interface, which I don't have an example to show you or a demo to show you today, but it will present a visual view of your documents. And you will once again be able to point to different elements in the documents and teach the model what each element means. and then have it build up the model based on that teaching interaction. And you can refine the model over time as well. As you test it, you can provide more teaching direction, more rules, if you will, on how to extract data, and have the model get better and better as you provide more of those rules and more of that input. Then as you feed it documents, it'll use that machine teaching algorithm that is built up to actually classify the documents and extract data. What you're really doing in that process is you're interacting with the document. You are providing rules and building up a schema as to what different entities within a document mean. And the visual interface allows you to do that in a very, very visual way, so that it can be, let's say, a business analyst or a technical analyst that does that, as opposed to an IT person. We also, one point I want to make, we saw the machine learning method of bringing documents in as an integration to AI Builder, which is very good. AI Builder is a good tool for this. The machine teaching method for doing this is actually a new interface that's being built by the Project Cortex team right within the user interaction that happens with Project Cortex. Now, we've talked about this a little bit, just to summarize, form processing through machine learning and AI Builder. Some of the, I'll say, limits of AI Builder will apply here in terms of the types of documents it can interact with, but in its first iteration, it will interact with Office documents and PDF documents. So those will be coming. Those are the standard documents that we typically work with. Again, it's about processing documents, extracting metadata, and populating metadata columns with those entities that you've taught the model with. Machine teaching, that the model is learned from. Machine teaching will do the same thing, except again, you've built up those rules for how to extract data based on how you have taught the model. And both of them result in the same thing. All right, if we look at the second key component within Project Cortex, so this is being able to extract knowledge, curate knowledge, and actually present it to users in their day-to-day work. We'll find that this is a little bit more of how users will interact with Cortex, right? What we saw earlier, that's where users will upload documents and they will automatically get processed. It'll likely be a knowledge manager or a technical analyst or a business analyst who will create those AI models for those libraries. But what we're about to see is much more about the everyday user interaction with Project Cortex. So if we think about how to curate knowledge within an organization, it's often based on things like project names, perhaps acronyms, skill sets within an organization, or maybe contacts or contact information that you deal with. These are some of the common aspects of working with information day to day, where let's say we're in an email and someone mentions a project name, or people are talking about an acronym that we don't necessarily know because we're new to a team or we're new to a project, or maybe a skill set that we need to find someone who's an expert in an organization who can deal with this skill set or has it and can leverage it on a particular project. Being able to access this type of information is another key use case that Cortex helps with. I find the acronym use case is interesting, where when you have a new person that comes to an organization, it often takes them a period of time to get up to speed with all the 3-letter acronyms that we use, 3 or more letters, that we use day to day, or project names that we throw around very easily because we know what they mean. And we don't think twice about the fact that there's someone new in the room and they may not know what Project Nexus means to our organization. So being able to find out what all of these types of data mean, what they mean to our day-to-day work, is really a key aspect of coming into an organization and learning how to work with a team. And that's where Project Cortex can also really help. So I'm going to step out to another demonstration here. Again, this is a demo on the Microsoft Project Cortex resources site. So here I have an email within Microsoft 365. And you'll notice in the email, there's a word here, core, that's been highlighted. And if I actually click on that or hover over that, I get this new component that's called a topic card. Now, there's a couple of key new terms here. This term that got highlighted, this is referred to as a topic. And the card that appears when I hover over it or click on it is a topic card. Now, the topic card is a new component that provides me information about that topic. It's an interactive card, so I actually can interact with it. I can say that I want to follow it. I can suggest an edit if I'm an expert in that topic. I can scroll through it and see who are the people that are connected to this topic or who have knowledge about it. I can see other resources and I can click on those documents, or I can get to other related topics. Now, if I go to another one of the experiences that I work on day to day, let's say a SharePoint site. So if I scroll down on this SharePoint site, we'll again see topics that are highlighted, very much like we saw a moment ago. And if I hover or click on those topics, again, I get a topic card. Now, the topic card will be the same topic card I just saw in Outlook. So we're getting a consistent experience across different ways of working with knowledge. But I can do more than simply interact with this topic card. If I actually click on the title, that's going to take me to another new destination within SharePoint that's called the Knowledge Center. Now, the Knowledge Center is where you can find and curate and interact with knowledge within the organization. So this is where Project Cortex will actually mine all of the documents and data within your organization and actually extract those topics based on a number of machine learning algorithms, things like term frequency, term proximity, the connections between terms, and a number of other methods. But it's automatically collecting and mining this data and then presenting them as topics. Now, you will have a method to curate those topics as well. So as perhaps a knowledge manager or an information manager within an organization, you'll be able to determine which topics do I present to my organization and which don't I want to present. Or perhaps, do I need to edit the definition that's been pulled for this? Now, the mining that we're talking about certainly uses the Microsoft Graph to pull this data. It's also using Microsoft Search and all the connectors that it can interact with to actually pull this data as well to create your knowledge center. So you actually have the ability to have Project Cortex automatically create your knowledge center and the topics for you. Or you can curate those topics and create them and edit them yourself. So if I scroll down in this particular knowledge center page, not only do I see people that have to do with this topic, but I also see different resources like documents and videos from Stream and so on that I can click on and access. I can see metadata about them. So, who modified them, what's the source, was it helpful, how many views has it had? If I go a little bit further, I can actually see how this topic is related to other topics. Now, this is being pulled from the knowledge graph, from the knowledge network that's being built behind the scenes. And I can click on these topics in order to navigate to those topics. Not only that, I can actually use the Knowledge Center to explore what other topics exist in my organization or might be relevant for me. So if I'm trying to get up to speed on something in my organization, the Knowledge Center can be a really good place to start because it brings together the inherent knowledge that we have throughout our organization on a number of different topics. If I click a little further down, we can also see questions and answers that have come in from, let's say, Yammer or Microsoft Teams as well. Yammer has a new ability to actually identify questions and best answers to those questions. Those do get brought in here. And you'll have a nice method in Microsoft Teams to say, let's contribute this conversation to the knowledge network. Now from here, if I'm someone who's, again, an expert in a particular topic, I'll be able to come here and navigate through topics. I'll be able to actually contribute to topics as well. So I can see what my topics are. I can find other topics and actually go and suggest edits to those topics. So this is an interactive site that I, as an individual within an organization, can either use as a resource to learn about information, or I can use it to actually contribute knowledge and information to the organization. As well, the Knowledge Center is simply a modern SharePoint site with web parts on it. So you can actually edit it and add your own web parts to it if you have the right permissions to edit the site page. So for example, let's say I want to add to this LinkedIn. Let's say I want to bring in information from LinkedIn Learning to the Knowledge Center site. I can simply add that web part to the page wherever I want to based on the zones that are created and actually modify that page just like I would any other SharePoint site page. So not only is Cortex automatically mining that data for you, letting you curate it and present it in a very consumable way, it lets you edit that page so that it meets the needs of your organization if you have some very specific need that you want to address. All right, so I'm going to go back to my slides. And let's just review a little bit about what we talked about there. All right, and if you think about this, this is really about empowering your organization with the knowledge that already exists within your organization and providing some smart tools to help you actually curate and manage that information. I think we're going to see roles like a knowledge manager or an information manager take on new importance within organization as we start to collect this data, connect it together, automatically process it, and really turn it into knowledge. You're going to find that that knowledge goes through a life cycle, and people will need to be responsible for actually dealing with it. Now, Project Cortex will mine unstructured content and semi-structured content. So in both cases, these are documents, but they're also emails and SharePoint sites and Teams conversations and Yammer conversations. In all cases, it's going to use a taxonomy, it's going to leverage metadata, it's going to categorize that content and use annotations as well. Now, when we look at topic mining, those topics go through a life cycle. So first of all, topics are found and they are extracted, let's say from documents or emails. They're grouped together so that you have relevance between topics. They're clustered so that you bring in the idea of frequency, so how frequently is a particular term used, in what context is it used. And then it's filtered so that we can actually present it in a meaningful way, resulting in the knowledge center that you saw. Now, the methods for curating these topics will actually be a new and improved managed metadata service, let's say modern managed metadata service within SharePoint Online. So you may or may not have heard of this, but the managed metadata service is getting a revamp, finally. It is getting some love and becoming much more modern from what you've seen today, over the last 10 years, actually, because I don't think that thing has really changed much since SharePoint 2010. So we're looking forward to that interface, and that modern managed metadata service really is going to be where you manage and administer those topics and curate those topics. Okay, so as a topic goes through this process, you're going to see things like finding a definition for a topic, finding an acronym for a topic, having it find and mine the related people, so who has actually interacted with this topic, finding files and sites that contain information about the topic, and then finding other related topics. So other topics that have been curated that might be connected or related to this one, creating connections between those so that you can traverse the knowledge graph visually and actually move from one topic to another related topic. Okay. Now that knowledge network, as we talked about, that is a visual representation of the knowledge graph. It actually shows you the different topics within your organizations. And the artifacts that are being connected to those topics are SharePoint sites and files and people and meetings and communications that have occurred, let's say through Teams, for example, channel communication, question and answers, perhaps through Yammer, acronyms or definitions that are maybe found in, Bing for Business or throughout your organization, and then even non-digital data as well, if you have scanned documents or videos, audio files as well. Now, what Cortex is doing by mining your data is really crowdsourcing that information in kind of a lightweight way and providing you a method for curating it. Again, that method for curating it will be a modern managed metadata service with some new capabilities and a modern UI. But you're going to need to think about topics going through a life cycle. So first of all, topics are discovered. When they're discovered and they are connected with other topics, as we saw, they'll become a candidate topic. And then a person will likely identify this as a topic that we want to actually have exposed to our organization, that we actually want to show up as a highlighted topic. At that point, it becomes an active topic, and this is where people use it day to day. And that's likely where most topics will live the majority of their time. Over time, those topics may no longer be necessary in the organization, so we might want to archive them, because they might still be useful if you need to retrospectively look back at topics that were useful at a particular time. But eventually, after topics have not been relevant for a period of time, they will likely be deleted. So this is what we see as the likely life cycle of a topic. And our curation interface, the Managed Metadata Service, will give us the ability to curate these topics across this life cycle once the product is released. Another example that I wanted to show quickly for, adding topics to your knowledge center is I find myself in this situation often where I'm in a Microsoft Teams conversation, or this could be happening, here it's happening in a chat, but it could be happening as part of a channel conversation also, where we're having a meaningful conversation about a project or about a topic. And those messages are no longer simply, IM chats, one-liners or small information that if it gets deleted, we don't really care about. We often see quite a bit of information shared through especially channel messages and sometimes chat messages, right? Sometimes we'll share documents through them. Sometimes we'll make decisions through those channel conversations or chat conversations. So they tend to become very important. And having them simply deleted very quickly after 30 days or after some short period of time, I don't think becomes an option anymore. So when we want to actually add those to the Knowledge Center, we'll actually have a bot where we can tell it, bot, add the question and answer as part of a particular topic. We'll be asked to confirm that. We'll say okay. And then the knowledge bot will actually add the conversation to the Knowledge Center and connect it up to the people that were having that conversation and the topics that were being discussed. So this is a really nice interactive way to very easily add information and knowledge to our knowledge graph. Okay, so what we saw here, just to review, we saw that in the interface that we work with day to day, topics will be highlighted. Those topics can be curated. We talked about that. And as someone hovers over or clicks on those topics, again, in our regular day-to-day way that we work, topic cards will appear. Those topic cards are interactive. They help connect me, the user, to data that's relevant to that topic, but also I can suggest edits to it, and I can navigate from that to the Knowledge Center. We see those show up in not only emails, we saw SharePoint sites a moment ago, but also in documents themselves. So within a document, we'll be able to actually search on that topic and have the same topic card appear on the right-hand side. And again, interact with it the same way we did a moment ago. SharePoint sites, as we talked about, hovering over, clicking on a topic shows me the same topic card that appears. So really bringing that knowledge to how we work day to day. Now, some of the controls that Microsoft is looking to provide as part of curating your topics are things like allowing you to confirm whether a candidate topic is or is not a topic we want to expose, allowing you to reject or delete topics, allowing you to create topics. Let's say the data mining didn't find a topic that's important to your organization. You'll be able to add that as a topic. As a knowledge manager, you'll be able to add that topic and choose for it to be surfaced for your employees. Let's say the data mining did find a topic that you don't want to expose. Let's say there was a topic about a merger and acquisition related to a particular company, and you're not permitted to actually expose that. There you'll be able to remove or delete that topic so that it doesn't actually show up or get surfaced for users. You'll be able to merge topics together as you want to find ways to, let's say, streamline how knowledge is presented. You can envision ways where if you've got lots of information that you're gathering, the data mining may find a very large number of topics, and it may make sense to actually merge some together to streamline how people find information. You'll be able to seed topics with the taxonomy and term sets, acronyms, for example, upload definitions or dictionaries of topics, and tell it to avoid topics that are highly sensitive to the organization as well. So there's a number of controls being brought about for how you manage and curate your topics. So in the last little bit of time, I'm just going to talk quickly about what else you need to know about Project Cortex, and then maybe open it up to any questions that anyone might have. I know this is kind of a lot of information I've thrown at you pretty quickly. There's a lot more to come out about Project Cortex. An important thing to know is that Project Cortex will be a premium license. So it will require an additional license on top of your standard Office 365 E3 license. It is not yet clear if it will be bundled with the E5 licenses, but it will not be bundled with E3s. It will require a premium license on top of that. It is in private preview today. On the tech community site, you can actually sign up for the private preview if you wish to participate. Now, Microsoft has had an overwhelming number of submissions for that private preview, so it may take a little while for them to actually respond, but they have been very responsive to them. So I encourage you to sign up for the private preview. The target timeframe for releasing this product to market is the first half of 2020, so this year. It's important to know that it's built on top of SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and Teams. So the goal here is not to have you move your content that's already in Microsoft 365. The goal is to have it leverage the content that's already in there. It also has a very strong connection to Microsoft Search. So if you have other content sitting in other repositories that you can use Microsoft Search to search, so let's say other cloud repositories that Microsoft Search provides a connector to, or your network file shares, you will be able to leverage that knowledge within Cortex as well. And ultimately, Project Cortex is really about taking all of that data and information that we have throughout organization and helping you to turn it into knowledge that you can leverage to be more effective in your jobs in automated ways. It's both providing a built-in interface to surface that knowledge easily or to process forms, but there's also an API that'll be available through the Microsoft Graph to help you actually integrate and interact with it on a programmatic level so you can integrate it into some of your other line of business systems if you wish. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions that anyone wanted to ask. Christian, did we get any questions on the chat?
Nothing that no obvious questions here. A couple comments, but I'm also checking on the live stream over on Facebook. If there are any questions, feel free to ask, and if we don't handle them right here, we'll can always follow up afterwards if people have questions or are looking at the recording. But nothing
Christian,
right now.
do you have any questions?
I don't.
You don't? Okay. Well, I hope that was helpful. As we mentioned there, my contact information was there. Please do reach out if there's any other questions. There are a number of blogs out on the internet about Project Cortex. Again, the Microsoft site around this, maybe I'll just show. So the Protivity blog does have a blog that I wrote on Project Cortex that goes into some depth. And then the tech community site here is actually really helpful on Project Cortex. It's got a lot of information on it, so encourage you to check it out. There is a place here for you to apply to join the private preview. You do get access to the videos and sessions that were presented at Microsoft Ignite on Project Cortex. And then there are videos, there's demos, there's more articles, and there's a podcast or two as well on Project Cortex.
And I know that there's a number of Microsoft folks that are out, including Naomi Moneypenny, that are out actively presenting out on the road. And so there are a number of new presentations that are being added all the time. So always check out on SlideShare and just kind of out in the community. But there's a ton of content that's also available just through YouTube.
That's right. Naomi is an integral part of this project. So she's out presenting in a number of places and has a lot of deep technical knowledge about Cortex. All right. Well, thanks everyone for your time today. We'll give you a few minutes of your day back. But again, let us know if you've got any questions at all that you'd like to pose.
And thanks again, Antonio, for taking the time and for everybody for participating today. Once again, as part of the Microsoft User Group Utah group and the Office 365 and SharePoint user groups, thank you, Antonio, for taking the time out of your day today. And for those that are local here, would like to participate in more of the Microsoft-centric user group activities, just go out to Meetup and do a search for Mugut, M-U-G-U-T, and you'll be able to find our page. And we're kind of a roll-up of about 12, 13, 14 different Microsoft user groups here in the area. And we'd love to have you participate in any of those. Well, thanks a lot, Antonio.
Thanks, Christian. Have a great day, everyone.